She was a prostitute. But what happened after her death astonished even a wise old monk. Long ago, in an ancient kingdom cradled between mist-shrouded mountains and gleaming golden pagodas, there lived a Buddhist monk whose name was Ananda. He was already advanced in years, his head shaved, his robe simple and patched, his heart completely pure, and his mind as still as a forest pool at dawn. Every morning, whatever the weather, he would walk barefoot through the dusty streets of the city, carrying his begging bowl, accepting whatever food the villagers offered with quiet gratitude. The people revered him for his serenity, his gentle wisdom, and the peace that seemed to radiate from him like soft light. Yet, only a short distance from a monastery, in the shadowed lanes where respectable folks seldom walked after dusk, there lived a woman whose existence could not have been more different from a monk's. Her name was Maya, and she was a prostitute. Throughout the city and even beyond, men spoke of her extraordinary beauty. Rich merchants, soldiers, and travelers sought her company, and her rooms were filled with silk cushions, golden ornaments, and the scent of costly perfume. But for all the gold that passed through her hands, her heart was heavy with sorrow and weariness. She had never chosen this life. Poverty in her childhood, the death of her parents, and the harsh twist of fate had pushed her step by step into a world she quietly despised. When the city finally slept and silence fell, she would sit alone by her window, gazing across the dark river toward the flickering oil lamps of the distant monastery, and whisper to herself, "Will I ever know peace in this lifetime?" One quiet morning, the threads of destiny drew these two very different lives together. Venerable Ananda, walking his usual alms round to the marketplace, happened to pause at the entrance to the lane where Maya lived. She was standing on her balcony, as she often did, watching the world pass by, when she saw the old monk, his bare feet dusty, his posture straight yet humble, his face calm as still water. Something deep inside her stirred. It was a feeling she could not name, a faint but unmistakable sense of coolness in the midst of her burning life. The next day she waited again. When she saw him approaching, she hurried downstairs, her hands trembling slightly, and gently placed a ripe mango into his bowl. Ananda lifted his eyes, and, for one brief moment, their gazes met. There was no disgust in his look, no judgment, no cold piety, only boundless compassion. That single silent exchange touched something buried deep within Maya's heart. From that morning onward, she began to offer alms every day. She did not do it out of fear or to buy forgiveness. She did it because, for the first time, she felt seen as a human soul rather than as a body for hire. Some of the market people noticed and began to gossip. "Look at that sinner trying to buy merit from a monk," they sneered behind her back. Yet Ananda never turned away. Day after day he accepted whatever small gift she brought. A few coins, a handful of rice, a single flower. With exactly the same gentle smile he gave to the wealthiest merchant or the most pious old woman. To him, all beings were equal in the eyes of the Dharma. No soul was beyond redemption. As months flowed by, Maya's longing for inner change grew stronger. One by one she turned away her clients. The money quickly dwindled, hunger began to gnaw, but she swept her rooms clean, burned incense morning and evening, and sat in silence trying to calm her restless mind the way she had seen the monks do. Years of hardship and sorrow had weakened her body, and the weight of old memories pressed heavily upon her heart. One evening, just after sunset, she walked to the riverbank to wash her face in the cool water. There, beneath the rising moon, she collapsed. The next morning, fishermen found her body lying peacefully on the sand, her face serene, her lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Word spread quickly through the city. A group of self-righteous townspeople went to the monastery and, with mocking voices, informed the old monk, "Your faithful devotee is dead. The prostitute has surely gone straight to the deepest hell." Ananda looked at them calmly, without the slightest trace of anger, and replied, "Do not speak from ignorance. You see only the outer shell of life. You cannot see what I am about to see." Then he returned to the meditation hall, sat upon his small mat, closed his eyes, and entered profound samadhi. In that clear inner vision, Ananda beheld Maya's soul rising like a tongue of golden flame. The heavy iron chains of past karma that had bound her for so many years were cracking and falling away, link by link. Her final thoughts had not been regret, shame, or bitterness. In her last moments, her mind had been filled with gratitude toward the monk who had never condemned her, and with simple faith in the path of awakening. That pure aspiration, arising even once with complete sincerity at the moment of death, burned away countless lifetimes of negative karma, like a great fire consuming dry grass. Softly, almost inaudibly, Ananda whispered, "She is free." When he opened his eyes and told the people what he'd seen, some laughed in disbelief. Others grew uneasy and afraid. "How can this be?" they demanded. "A woman who lived in the sense of the heavens, while we, who fast, who give alms, who keep the precepts, still struggle year after year for liberation?" The old monk answered gently, "Heaven and hell are not distant places marked on a map. They are states born in the mind itself. A heart made pure, even for a single instant, can rise from the lowest pit. A heart filled with pride and judgment can fall from the highest throne." That very night, after Maya's body had been placed on the funeral pyre beside the river and the flames had done their work, Ananda sat once more in meditation. Again he saw her, this time radiant and joyful in one of the heavenly realms, surrounded by celestial music and beings of light. Yet even in that bliss, her gratitude toward the monk who had shown her kindness remained so deep that she formed a sincere wish. One day may I return to the human world, not to live again in suffering and desire, but to walk the path of truth until full awakening. Years passed like clouds drifting across the face of the moon. In a distant village far from the old city, a baby girl was born to a humble family. From her earliest childhood, she displayed an unusual nature. Without anyone teaching her, she would sit quietly with her eyes closed for long periods, perfectly still. Her mother used to say, "It is as though she remembers something from another life." When the girl reached the age of 16, an inner call became irresistible. She left home with her parents' blessing and traveled on foot until she reached the very monastery where Venerable Ananda, now very old and frail, still lived. One day, as the girl stood respectfully in the courtyard, the elderly monk passed by. He paused, looked deeply into her eyes, and suddenly a radiant smile lit his face. In that instant, he recognized the same gentle light he had once seen rising from Maya's body on the night of her death. Tears of profound joy welled up in his eyes. Tears not of sorrow, but of sacred recognition. The young woman became his close disciple, devoting herself completely to meditation and a life of simplicity. Although she had no conscious memory of her previous birth, her compassion was extraordinary, especially toward women trapped in poverty and degradation. She would care for them, teach them basic skills, and speak softly. "No soul is born impure. It is the suffering of life that covers our original light. Yet even in the darkest heart, the seed of awakening waits patiently." Many more years went by. When Ananda was on the eve of his own passing, thin and weak, he called the young woman to his side. Holding her hand gently, he said, "Once you were lost in the shadows of sorrow, but now you walk in the clear light of the Dharma. This is the true meaning of karma, not punishment, not revenge, but patient transformation, lifetime after lifetime, until the heart is perfectly pure." That night, after the old monk entered final nirvana and the monastery bells rang softly through the darkness, the young woman went out and sat beneath the same full moon that had once shone upon Maya's tears. In the stillness, she felt the unbroken presence of her ancient teacher guiding her still, reminding her that loving kindness and compassion are stronger than death and stretch across countless lives. So, when we ask, where do we go after we die, heaven or hell, the answer is not found by looking upward to the sky or downward to the earth. The answer lies within the heart itself. Heaven is born whenever we act with kindness, even in the midst of pain. Hell is born whenever we cling to hatred, even while surrounded by comfort. Maya's story, handed down through generations, continues to remind us old ones who have seen many seasons come and go. No soul is ever beyond redemption. No burden of past mistakes is too heavy to be dissolved by even one moment of genuine faith, one sincere act of love. Karma is not a cruel judge waiting to punish. Karma is a patient teacher, silent and just, giving us life after life to learn, to grow, to polish the mirror of the heart until it reflects only light. And so, just as Maya, who once wept alone in a gilded prison, rose through darkness to touch the eternal, so can every one of us. If we choose compassion instead of condemnation, humility instead of pride, forgiveness instead of resentment, then somewhere beyond the veil of this fleeting world, perhaps the old monk Ananda and the soul he once knew as Maya walk together again, not as master and disciple, not as man and woman, but as two fully awakened beings, liberated forever, dancing joyfully in the boundless light of the Dharma. May all of us, as our years advance, remember this ancient tale and let it soften our hearts toward every suffering being we meet. For in the end, that is the only heaven worth reaching and the only way to be free.